You scroll through your phone. There's no one to call. Not because people are busy, because there's genuinely no one there. And the scariest part? You don't fully understand why. This video is about that why, and it might be uncomfortable to watch.
We're going to go through 8 signs, real behavioral patterns that push people away without you ever realizing it. Stay until sign 5. Most people recognize themselves there and finally understand something they've been carrying for years.
Nobody wakes up and decides to be lonely. It happens slowly. One awkward moment, one unanswered text, one friendship that quietly fades. And usually the patterns behind it aren't obvious. They feel completely normal from the inside. That's what makes them so hard to see.
The first sign is one of the most common and one of the hardest to notice. When someone shares something with you, what's your instinct? Most people who struggle with friendships immediately redirect. Someone mentions they had a rough week, and before they finish the sentence, you're already talking about your rough week. It doesn't feel selfish from the inside. It feels like connecting, like relating. But the other person experiences something different. They feel unheard. They feel like a warm-up act for your story. Over time, people stop sharing with you, not because they're cold, because they've learned that there isn't really space for them in the conversation.
Friendships aren't built in the good moments. They're built in the inconvenient ones. The Tuesday evening when someone needs to talk. The moment when showing up costs you something. Sign 2 is showing up only when it's easy. You're great at plans when the energy is high. But when a friend needs quiet support, when life gets a little heavy, you go quiet too. People notice this pattern faster than you'd expect. They don't announce it. They just slowly stop reaching out for the real stuff. They keep you for the fun. And eventually, even that fades, because connection without depth doesn't hold.
There's a version of honesty that becomes exhausting to be around. Sign 3 is chronic negativity, not occasional venting, which is completely human, but a consistent pattern where almost everything becomes a complaint, a criticism, or a worst-case scenario. Every plan has a problem. Every piece of good news gets a but. People can only absorb so much heaviness before they start protecting their own energy, and they do it quietly, by spending less time with you, by keeping conversations surface level, by slowly disappearing. This isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation, and it happens without anyone making a conscious decision to pull away. This one is subtle and painful. Sign 4 is the inability to genuinely celebrate other people's wins. Someone gets a promotion, falls in love, achieves something they worked hard for, and instead of warmth, you feel a flicker of something else. Maybe comparison, maybe resentment, maybe just a quiet emptiness. You might say the right words, but people feel the difference between congratulations and real joy for them. It's in the eyes, the tone, the pause before you speak. Friendships need a certain generosity of spirit, the ability to let someone else's happiness be fully theirs, without making it about you, without measuring it against your own life. Here's one that hides behind a reasonable excuse. I don't want to bother anyone. Sign 5 is never being the one to reach out first. You wait. You assume that if someone wanted to see you, they'd ask. But here's what actually happens. Other people are waiting too. Everyone is a little afraid of rejection. Everyone wonders if they matter to the people in their life. When you never initiate, the relationship slowly starves. Not dramatically, just quietly. Plans stop happening, months pass, and then one day you realize the friendship is gone, and you're not even sure when it ended. It ended in the silence between messages.
There's a kind of person who is genuinely funny, quick, sharp, always with a deflection ready. And often, that humor is a wall. Sign 6 is using wit and sarcasm to avoid being real. Every time a conversation gets emotionally close, a joke appears. Every time someone tries to see the real you, the mask gets sharper. It feels safe. It even looks charming for a while. But people who want actual friendship need access to you, the real, unguarded, slightly uncertain you. When that never comes, they stop trying to find it. You become someone people enjoy in a group, but never truly know. And that distance becomes loneliness.
Every close relationship will eventually hit friction. That's not a flaw. That's just what intimacy looks like over time. Sign 7 is what you do with that friction. Some people shut down completely, go cold, go silent, disappear until the discomfort passes. Others swing the other way. They escalate. They make it bigger than it is. They say things that leave marks. Both responses signal the same thing to the other person. Being close to you has a cost. Conflict handled badly is one of the fastest ways to end friendships quietly. People don't always leave after the argument. They leave after they realize the argument revealed something they can't unsee.
This is the one underneath all the others. Sign 8 isn't a behavior, it's a belief. Deep down, some part of you doesn't fully believe you're worth the effort of a real friendship. So you self-sabotage. You pull back right when things get close. You interpret neutral moments as rejection. You don't show up for people because some part of you assumes they don't really want you there anyway. This belief is often invisible. It just looks like bad timing, or being busy, or that's just how I am. But it quietly shapes every interaction. And until it's seen clearly, it keeps running the show from the background.
None of these patterns appeared out of nowhere. Most of them are responses to childhood environments where connection felt unsafe, to friendships that ended in betrayal, to families where emotional needs weren't met or even acknowledged. The brain learns early what closeness means. If closeness meant pain, it built walls. If vulnerability meant rejection, it learned to hide. These aren't character flaws, they are adaptations. Sophisticated, once useful strategies for surviving emotional environments that didn't feel safe. The problem is that the brain doesn't automatically update those strategies when the environment changes. It keeps running old code in new situations, and that's where things break down.
Loneliness is one of the most physically damaging experiences a human being can have. Research consistently links chronic social isolation to shortened lifespan, increased inflammation, higher rates of depression and anxiety. But beyond the science, there's the lived experience, the Sunday afternoon that stretches too long, the good news you have no one to call, the moment something funny happens and there's no one to share it with. That particular kind of quiet is something people rarely talk about, because admitting you're lonely feels like admitting something shameful, like you're someone no one chose. That feeling is more common than you know, and it is not the truth about you. So what actually changes things? Not a grand gesture, not forcing yourself to become a different person overnight. It starts with one thing: noticing. catching the moment you redirect a conversation back to yourself, feeling the impulse to go quiet in conflict and choosing to stay present instead, letting someone's good news land before you respond. These are small shifts, almost invisible from the outside, but they compound. Real change in social behavior happens through repetition of small, corrected moments, not through transformation. You don't need to become someone else. You need to become more available to other people and to the parts of yourself you've been protecting for a long time.
Here's what's important to hold on to. Recognizing yourself in this list is not a verdict, it's information. The people who never examine their patterns, who never ask hard questions about why their relationships don't last, they don't change. You're already doing the harder thing just by watching this. Patterns that took years to build won't dissolve in an afternoon, but they can soften, they can shift. People in their 40s and 50s build their first genuinely close friendships. It happens when the walls come down a little, not all at once, not perfectly, just enough to let someone in. That's all it takes to start.
Before we wrap up, take a moment with this. Think about a friendship that drifted away, one that mattered to you. Don't try to decide whose fault it was. Just gently ask, which of these patterns might have been present? Not as self-punishment, as curiosity. The goal isn't guilt. Guilt just freezes you in place. The goal is clarity, because you can't change a pattern you haven't named. And the fact that you're asking these questions, the fact that you stayed through an uncomfortable video about loneliness, that already says something about you. It says you care about growing. That's not nothing. That's actually the whole foundation.
Let's bring it all together. 8 signs you might be pushing people away without realizing it. 1. Making every conversation about yourself. 2. Only showing up when it's convenient. 3. Chronic negativity that drains the people around you. 4. Struggling to genuinely celebrate others. 5. Never initiating, letting silence slowly end things. 6. Using humor as armor to avoid real closeness. 7. Shutting down or escalating when conflict arrives. 8. And most importantly, not believing deep down that you're worth knowing. These aren't random behaviors. They're a system. And like any system, once you can see it clearly, you can begin to change it, one pattern at a time.
If something in this video hit close to home, I'd really love to know which sign resonated most. Drop it in the comments. Not because it's vulnerable, but because when you name it out loud, even in a comment box, something shifts. You're also not alone in this. Reading through the comments on videos like this one, you start to realize how many people are carrying the exact same quiet. If this felt useful, share it with someone who might need it. And if you want to go deeper into the psychology of connection and behavior, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of thing we explore here every week.
Friendship isn't about being perfect company. It's not about being endlessly positive, always available, never complicated. Real friendship is built between real people, messy, inconsistent, sometimes awkward people who keep showing up anyway. If you've spent a long time feeling like something about you makes closeness impossible, that's worth examining, not because you're broken, but because you're human, and humans are wired for connection. The patterns we talked about today aren't life sentences. They're just patterns, and patterns can change. Start small, stay curious about yourself, and be a little gentler with the part of you that still wants to be known. It's still there. It never left.
did staying home stop being a choice and start feeling like the only option? Not laziness, not antisocial behavior, something quieter, something most people never talk about. If leaving the house feels harder than it should, this video is for you. We're going to look at 10 reasons your mind and body resist stepping outside. Some will feel obvious, others will surprise you, and at least one, I promise, will make you feel genuinely seen. Stay with me.
Psychologists call it different things: avoidance behavior, agoraphobic tendencies, sensory overload response. But most people who experience it just call it Tuesday. The world got louder, faster, more demanding, and home became something more than shelter. It became armor.
The first reason is one almost nobody names correctly. They call it introversion. They call it shyness. But what's really happening is overstimulation. The modern world is genuinely, measurably louder than it was 20 years ago. More notifications, more crowds, more noise layered on noise. And some nervous systems simply reach capacity faster than others. When you walk outside, your brain is processing thousands of inputs simultaneously. Traffic, faces, social expectations, temperature, sound. For certain people, that cognitive load hits a wall fast. Home isn't laziness. Home is the one place where the volume finally gets turned down, and that relief becomes a need. The second reason lives in the hours before you leave, not the leaving itself, the preparation. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened. You imagine scenarios, plan responses, anticipate judgments. By the time you actually reach the door, you're already exhausted, and you haven't gone anywhere yet. Psychologists call this anticipatory anxiety. Your brain runs simulations to feel safe, but those simulations cost real mental energy. So you cancel, you reschedule, you tell yourself tomorrow, and tomorrow you do it again. It's not that the outside world is dangerous, it's that your mind has already lived through it twice before you even put on your shoes.
Sign 3. Home as identity. Something shifted in the last decade. Home stopped being where you sleep and became where you live, fully, completely. Your workspace is here, your entertainment is here, your social life, your meals, your creative outlets, all of it inside 4 walls. And when a place holds that much of who you are, leaving it doesn't feel like stepping out, it feels like stepping away from yourself. This is especially true for people who work from home, create from home, connect from home. The boundary between self and space dissolves, and the outside world starts to feel unnecessary, almost intrusive, like a guest who wasn't invited.
Sign 4. The comparison gaze. Going outside means being seen, and being seen, in a world built on curated images and silent comparisons, carries a weight it never used to. You're aware of how you look, how you move, what you're wearing, whether you seem purposeful or lost. That awareness isn't vanity, it's a nervous system response to perceived social evaluation. Humans are wired to care about how the group sees them. It's evolutionary. But when that wiring meets modern social anxiety, the result is a kind of low-grade performance dread every time you approach a public space. Staying home means never having to be on stage, and that is an enormous relief. Sign 5. Routine gravity. There's a physics to staying home. The longer you stay, the harder it is to leave. Not metaphorically, neurologically. Your brain builds grooves, patterns, predictive pathways that expect tomorrow
to look exactly like today. When you haven't left in 3 days, leaving on day 4 requires overriding an entire system of established expectation. That requires energy, willpower, a reason strong enough to justify the disruption. And if nothing outside feels urgent enough, the couch wins, every time. This isn't weakness, it's habit architecture doing exactly what it's designed to do. The problem is, it was designed for survival, not for a comfortable apartment with fast delivery and streaming.
We're halfway through, and if you've recognized yourself in any of these, that's not an accident. These patterns are far more common than most people admit. But here's where it gets interesting. The next 5 reasons go deeper. We're moving from habits and preferences into something more psychological, the kind of patterns that don't resolve on their own just because you want them to. So if the first 5 felt familiar and a little uncomfortable, the next 5 might feel like someone read your private thoughts. Keep watching, because understanding what's actually happening inside you is always, always the first step towards something better.
There are a few more important signs ahead, but if this resonates with you, subscribe to Mind Patterns so you don't miss our upcoming breakdowns on psychology and mental health.
Sign 6. Grief for simpler times. Some people don't avoid the outside world because of anxiety. They avoid it because the outside world no longer matches the one they remember. Cities change, neighborhoods change. The faces are different, the pace is faster. The small rituals that used to make public life feel safe, the familiar cafe, the quiet park, the unhurried afternoon, have been replaced by something louder and more transactional. This is a form of grief that rarely gets named. It's not depression exactly. It's more like disorientation. The world moved, and you didn't get a vote. So home becomes a time capsule. The one place that still feels recognizable, still feels like yours.
Sign 7. Chronic low-grade anxiety. Not every anxiety looks like panic attacks or visible distress. Most chronic anxiety is quiet. It's a baseline hum, a persistent sense that something could go wrong, that the world outside requires a level of alertness you can't always sustain. You're not afraid of one specific thing. You're just braced all the time, and bracing is exhausting. When home removes that bracing, when you can finally unclench, the contrast is so profound that going back outside starts to feel almost cruel. This is the psychology of avoidance at its most insidious. Not dramatic, not obvious, just a slow, quiet withdrawal from a world that demands more than you currently have.
Sign 8. Autonomy hunger. Here's one that surprises people. Some resistance to going outside isn't fear, it's control. The outside world is full of unpredictability, demands, social obligations, and situations you didn't choose and can't exit easily. Home is the one domain where you make every decision. What you eat, when you move, who you speak to, how loud the room is. For people who feel chronically powerless in other areas of life, at work, in relationships, financially, home becomes the last sovereign territory. Staying there isn't avoidance, it's autonomy. The problem is when that healthy need for control slowly calcifies into an inability to tolerate any environment you didn't design.
Sign 9. Digital world substitution. The outside world used to offer things you couldn't get anywhere else: connection, novelty, stimulation, a sense of participation in something larger. Now your phone delivers all of it, on demand, without weather or traffic or social risk.
This isn't a moral failing. It's a design outcome. The digital environment was built to be maximally satisfying with minimal friction. Of course, it wins against a crowded subway or an awkward social event. But here's what it doesn't deliver, and what no algorithm can simulate: the felt sense of being physically present in the world, the accidental conversation, the unexpected beauty, the reminder that you have a body and it belongs somewhere real.
The 10th reason is the hardest to say out loud. Some people don't want to go outside because going outside means confronting the gap between who they are now and who they used to be, or who they thought they'd become. The old confidence, the old ease, the version of themselves that didn't have to think this hard about a simple errand. Staying home protects the idea that this is temporary, that they're just taking a break, that tomorrow or next week they'll be ready. Going outside makes it real, makes the distance visible. And sometimes the most frightening thing isn't the world out there, it's the mirror it holds up.
What connects all 10 of these reasons is something psychologists call the avoidance relief cycle. You feel discomfort at the thought of going out. You avoid it. You feel immediate relief. And that relief teaches your brain that avoidance works, that it's solved the problem. So next time, the pull toward avoidance is stronger, and the threshold for what counts as too hard to face slowly lowers. This is how a preference becomes a pattern, how a pattern becomes a wall. It doesn't require a traumatic event or a clinical diagnosis. It just requires repetition. Small choices made consistently in the direction of staying in, until staying in stops feeling like a choice at all.
There's a particular loneliness that comes with this. Not the loneliness of being alone. Many people who rarely leave home have rich inner lives and warm digital connections. It's the loneliness of feeling like the world has moved on without you, of watching seasons change through a window, of knowing somewhere beneath the comfort that you're missing something you can't quite name. That loneliness is real, and it matters, because humans aren't designed for pure safety. We're designed for encounter, with strangers, with nature, with the unexpected. When we eliminate all friction, we also eliminate the moments that remind us we're alive, not just existing, actually, genuinely alive.
The goal isn't to force yourself outside and perform normalcy. That approach almost always backfires. What actually works is graduated exposure, tiny, non-threatening steps that slowly recalibrate your nervous system's threat assessment. Step outside for 60 seconds. No destination, no performance, just air. Then come back. Do it again tomorrow. Add a short walk, then a specific errand. The key is consistency over intensity. Your brain needs evidence, actual lived evidence, that the outside world is survivable, even enjoyable. You can't think your way to that belief. You have to move your way there, slowly, kindly, without punishing yourself for every step backward. Here's what's also true. Wanting to be home isn't a disease. Some people are genuinely happier with quieter, more inward lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. The question isn't whether you go outside enough by someone else's standard. The question is whether your relationship with the outside world is still a choice, whether you could go if something mattered enough, whether the door still opens both ways. If the answer is yes, you're fine. Protect your solitude. Enjoy your home. If the answer is uncertain, if you're not sure the door still opens, that uncertainty is worth sitting with.
gently, honestly, without judgment. Before we close, a question worth carrying with you. Think about the last time you left the house and something unexpected happened. Something small, a conversation, a moment of beauty, a feeling you couldn't have manufactured at home. How long ago was that? And when you imagine going outside tomorrow, not because you have to, but just to exist in the world for a while, what do you feel first? Curiosity? Dread? Relief that you don't have to? Whatever the answer is, it's information. Not a verdict, not a diagnosis, just a signal from some part of you that knows what it needs and is waiting to be heard.
10 reasons: overstimulation, anticipatory exhaustion, home as identity, the comparison gaze, routine gravity, grief for simpler times, chronic low-grade anxiety, autonomy hunger, digital substitution, and fear of who you've become. None of these are character flaws. All of them make complete psychological sense. But understanding them, naming them clearly, changes your relationship to them. You stop fighting yourself and start getting curious instead. And curiosity is always more powerful than willpower. You don't need to overhaul your life. You don't need to become someone who loves crowds and spontaneous adventures. You just need the door to stay open, even slightly, even rarely. That's enough to begin.
If something in this video landed for you, I'd genuinely love to know which reason felt most true. Drop it in the comments. Not to perform vulnerability, just because knowing you're not alone in this actually helps. It changes something. If you want more psychology content like this, honest, slow, human, subscribe. Every video is built around one real question that most people are quietly carrying. Next time, we're going somewhere equally interesting. And before you close this tab, go outside for 5 minutes. Not because you have to, just to remind yourself that you can. The world is still there, and so are you. Take care of yourself.
You walked into a room full of people, and something inside you just shut down. Not rudeness, not anxiety. Your brain literally hit a wall, and the only thing that could fix it was silence and being completely alone. If you've ever felt that desperate, almost physical need to escape the noise and be alone, stay with me. Because what's happening inside your mind isn't weakness. It's actually a sign of something remarkable about the way you're wired. Science now confirms what introverts and high IQ individuals have always known instinctively. The brain processes the world differently when it's built for depth. And when that brain gets overloaded, solitude isn't a luxury. It's neurological medicine. Sign 1. Your brain treats noise as a physical load. Most people experience background noise as background. For you, it's different. Every conversation nearby, every notification ping, every overlapping sound gets pulled into your conscious processing. Your brain doesn't filter it out, it engages with it. Neuroscientists call this sensory gating, the brain's ability to block irrelevant input. In high sensitivity and high IQ minds, that gate is wider open. More gets through, more gets processed, more drains the system. So when you finally step into a quiet room and close the door, your nervous system doesn't just relax, it exhales like it's been holding its breath for hours. That's not drama, that's neurological reality.
Sign 2. You replay conversations like a mental editor. Long after the party ends, the meeting finishes, the dinner is over, your mind is still running the tape. You replay what was said, what you said, what was meant, what might have been misunderstood. This isn't overthinking in the anxious sense, though it can feel that way. It's your brain's default mode network firing at high intensity, the same neural circuitry that drives creativity, self-reflection, and complex problem solving. But it needs space to do its work. In noise, it gets jammed. In silence, it finally gets to process, integrate, and eventually let go. Sign 3. Social interactions cost you energy, not give it. This is the one introverts spend years trying to explain to the people around them. It's not that you dislike people. You might genuinely love them. But social interaction, even good, warm, enjoyable interaction, runs on a fuel source that depletes. For extroverts, being around people refuels them. For you, it spends the tank. And the more stimulating the environment, the louder, the busier, the more emotionally complex, the faster that fuel burns. Solitude isn't you being antisocial. It's you going back to the charging station. Without it, every system starts to run slow.
Sign 4. Your nervous system has a lower stimulation threshold. Here's where neuroscience gets personal. Research by psychologist Elaine Aron, and later confirmed by brain imaging studies, shows that highly sensitive and introverted nervous systems process dopamine differently. They reach their optimal stimulation point faster than others, which means what feels energizing to most people, a busy office, a loud restaurant, a crowded event, has already pushed you past your peak and into overload territory. You're not being difficult. You're not being antisocial. Your nervous system is simply running at a different calibration. And that calibration requires quiet spaces, the way lungs require air.
We're halfway through, and I want to pause here, because everything we've covered so far explains why you get drained. But the second half of this is where it gets really important. What actually happens inside your brain during solitude? What heals? What rebuilds? What specific things your mind does in silence that it literally cannot do any other way? The science here is remarkable, and for a lot of you, it's going to explain things about yourself that no one ever gave you language for. Stay with me. This next part matters.
Sign 5. Silence activates your brain's most powerful network. When the noise stops, something extraordinary happens. Your brain shifts into what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a web of regions that activates specifically during rest and solitude. This network is responsible for self-reflection, future planning, creative synthesis, and meaning-making. In people with higher cognitive complexity, this network is more active, more connected, more hungry for processing time. It's not idle. It's doing some of the most important work your mind ever does. But here's the thing. It only switches on fully when external stimulation drops away. Solitude isn't emptiness. It's the condition your deepest thinking requires. Sign 6. You think in layers and need space to untangle them. Your thoughts don't arrive in single file. They arrive in clusters, layered, interconnected, referencing each other. An idea connects to a memory, connects to a question, connects to an emotion, connects to something you read 3 years ago. This is how complex minds naturally operate. But in noisy, socially demanding environments, those layers get compressed and tangled. You can feel it, that pressure behind the eyes, that sense of mental clutter. Solitude is the space where the layers can actually unfold.
where one thought leads naturally to the next, where the tangle becomes a thread you can actually follow.
Sign 7. Your emotional processing runs deeper and slower. When something emotionally significant happens, a conflict, a loss, a moment of joy, a difficult conversation, your nervous system doesn't process it quickly and move on. It sits with it, turns it over, feels its weight from multiple angles. This depth of emotional processing is actually a gift. It's linked to greater empathy, richer relationships, and more nuanced understanding. But it requires time and silence. In busy, stimulating environments, emotional processing gets postponed, shoved to the back, and it accumulates there, quietly building pressure. Solitude gives your emotional system the uninterrupted time it needs to actually complete the cycle, to feel it fully and release it.
Sign 8. Forced socialization creates a specific kind of exhaustion. There's a particular tiredness that doesn't come from physical exertion. It comes from spending hours being on, performing sociability, managing how you're perceived. Track it. You feel hollowed out. That specific exhaustion is your body telling you the bill has come due, and the only currency that pays it is solitude.
Sign 9. You are not antisocial. You are selectively restored. Let's be clear about something important. Needing solitude doesn't mean you fear people, hate company, or are broken in some social way. What it means is that your restoration system is selective. Most people recharge in company. You recharge in quiet. Both are valid. Both are neurologically real. The problem isn't introversion. It's a world that was largely designed for extroverted patterns and then labels quiet-seeking as withdrawal, coldness, or dysfunction. What you're actually doing when you retreat into silence is taking care of your brain with the same seriousness that others take care of their bodies. It's not avoidance, it's maintenance.
Sign 10. Physical solitude literally changes your brain chemistry. This is the one that makes it undeniable. Studies on restorative environments show that time spent in genuine physical solitude, away from screens, people, and ambient noise, measurably reduces cortisol levels, lowers heart rate variability, and allows the prefrontal cortex to recover executive function capacity. In other words, solitude doesn't just feel better. It physiologically restores the parts of your brain that handle decision-making, emotional regulation, and complex thought. For introverted and high IQ minds that run hotter and process deeper, this restoration isn't optional. It is quite literally how your brain heals itself and how you come back whole.
What we're really talking about isn't a personality quirk. It's a different cognitive architecture, one that evolution needed just as any other. High-sensitivity minds were the ones who noticed the subtle changes, who processed threats more deeply before acting, who held the group's emotional memory, who saw patterns others missed. That wiring came at a cost, a nervous system that runs closer to its limit in high-stimulation environments. But it also came with gifts that quieter, deeper, more solitary minds have always given the world. The need for silence isn't a flaw in the design. It's a feature of minds built to go deeper.
How many years did you spend apologizing for this? Saying yes to things that drained you because you didn't want to seem antisocial? Pushing through noise and crowds and endless interaction, and then collapsing alone at home, feeling like something was wrong with you. Maybe you were told you were too sensitive, too withdrawn, not a team player, not warm enough. But nothing was wrong with you. Your brain was working exactly as it was built to work.
It just needed something the world around you wasn't giving it. Space, quiet, room to breathe, room to think, room to be without performing, without filtering, without cost. So what does this actually look like in practice? Start small and protect it fiercely. 20 minutes of genuine solitude. No phone, no background TV, no podcasts filling the quiet. Isn't laziness, it's maintenance. Build transitions into your day. A few minutes alone before a social event, and deliberate quiet time after. Learn to communicate your needs without guilt. "I need some time alone to recharge" is not an apology. It's an accurate description of your neurological reality. And start noticing what you feel like after solitude. That clarity, that return of energy. That's not coincidence. That's your brain coming back online.
Here's the nuance that matters. This isn't a life sentence of isolation. Introverts love deeply, connect profoundly, and show up fully when they've had the space to restore. The goal isn't to disappear from the world. It's to build a relationship with solitude that allows you to engage with the world more genuinely, more presently, more fully. The people who understand this about themselves don't become hermits. They become better friends, partners, thinkers, and creators, because they've stopped running on empty and started honoring what their specific brain actually needs. Solitude isn't the opposite of connection. It's what makes real connection possible. I want to leave you with a question, and you don't need to answer it right now. Just let it sit somewhere quiet inside you. When was the last time you gave yourself genuine solitude? Not because you were exhausted, not because you had no other choice, but because you chose it as an act of care. When did you last protect your quiet the way you'd protect anything else that matters to you? If the answer is, "I can't remember," that's worth noticing. Not with guilt, just with the gentle understanding that your brain has been asking for something and you've been too busy to hear it.
Let's bring it all together. You process more sensory input than most because your brain's filter is set wider. You replay and analyze because your default mode network never really switches off. Social interaction costs you real energy. Your stimulation threshold is lower by design. Silence activates the exact neural networks you need most. Your thinking runs in layers that need space to untangle. Your emotional processing is deep and slow and needs time to complete. Forced sociability creates a specific, hollowed-out exhaustion. You restore selectively, and that's neurologically valid. And physical solitude literally heals your brain chemistry. 10 signs, 1 truth. You were built for depth.
If any part of this video felt like someone finally put words to something you've carried for a long time, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Tell me when you feel it most, that need for silence, for space, for a room of your own. Because this community is full of people who understand exactly what that feels like. And if this video helped you understand yourself even a little better, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, find your quiet, protect it, and remember, the depth of your mind is not a burden, it's a gift. You have a phone full of contacts, a feed full of faces, group chats that never stop, and yet, somewhere underneath all of it, there's this quiet, persistent feeling
that nobody actually knows you. Not really. When did being surrounded become the same thing as being alone?
In the next few minutes, we're going to name 12 psychological forces, things already running inside you and the people around you, that are quietly making this loneliness epidemic worse. Some of them will surprise you. One of them might change how you see everything.
Loneliness isn't new, but something shifted. Across every generation, boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, isolation is rising at the same time. Connection has never been more available. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. And patterns have causes, psychological causes. Let's look at them honestly.
The first trigger is something almost nobody talks about, because we're all doing it. We've learned to perform connection instead of actually having it. Every post is curated. Every story is framed. Every response is shaped around how we want to be seen. And slowly, over time, the real version of you stops showing up, even in your closest relationships. Because if people only ever see the edited version, you never actually feel known. You feel watched. And being watched is the opposite of being understood. This is where loneliness quietly takes root, not in isolation, but in the exhausting gap between who you are and who you're showing. Sign 2. Ambient awareness without real contact. Here's something strange that psychology is only beginning to understand. Scrolling through someone's life, seeing their photos, their updates, their moments, creates a feeling of contact without any actual connection happening. Researchers call it ambient awareness. Your brain registers the presence of people, marks them as checked in on, and quietly reduces the inner signal that says, reach out. So you never call, never meet, never have the real conversation, because it already feels like you did. But you didn't, and neither did they. And both of you were sitting somewhere alone, feeling vaguely like something is missing, without knowing what or why.
Sign 3. The collapse of third places. There used to be places that belonged to everyone. Not home, not work. The corner cafe, the neighborhood bar, the park where you'd run into the same faces on a Sunday. Sociologists call these third places, and for most of human history, they were where genuine, low-stakes connection happened. You didn't need a reason to be there. You just were. And so was someone else. Those places are disappearing, replaced by delivery, streaming, remote work, and the infinite scroll. And with them goes something we didn't realize we needed: the accidental, unplanned, beautifully ordinary human encounter. That absence leaves a mark.
Sign 4. Hyper-individualism. Modern culture tells a very specific story that the highest form of life is independence, self-sufficiency, needing no one. And we've absorbed that story so deeply, we mistake needing people for weakness. So we don't ask for help. We don't admit we're struggling. We don't let people in, not fully, because somewhere inside, we believe that needing connection is a flaw to be fixed, not a fundamental truth about being human. But here's the reality. Psychology keeps confirming. Humans are not wired for isolation. We are deeply, biologically social. The lonelier we become, the more our bodies and minds begin to break down, quietly, steadily, inevitably. Sign 5. Chronic busyness as social armor. Ask someone how they're doing. 9 times out of 10, the answer involves being busy. And there's a reason for that. Busyness has become armor. If your calendar is full, you never have to sit with the silence that might tell you something uncomfortable. You never have to notice the absence of real connection. You're just moving, always moving. But motion isn't meaning, and packed schedules are not the same as a full life. Many of the loneliest people on earth have the fullest calendars. They just haven't slowed down long enough to feel it yet, or to let anyone close enough to matter.
Sign 6, the vulnerability paradox. Here is one of the cruelest ironies in human psychology. The thing that creates real connection, vulnerability, openness, the willingness to say, "This is actually how I feel," is also the thing that feels most terrifying to do. So we stay surface level, safe, acceptable. We share the highlight reel and protect the mess. And the result is that every relationship quietly stays in the shallow end, never quite reaching the depth where real belonging lives. Both people in the room want to be known. Neither one goes first. So both walk away feeling alone. Not because of cruelty, not because of rejection, because of fear. Mutual, unspoken, invisible fear. We've named 6, and if any of them landed, if you recognized yourself or someone you love, stay with us, because what's coming next goes even deeper. We're moving from the social and behavioral triggers into something more interior, the psychological architecture built inside us, often in childhood, often without our knowledge, that makes genuine connection feel unsafe, impossible, or simply out of reach. These next 6 triggers are the ones most people never name, but once you see them, you can't unsee them. And seeing clearly is always, always where change begins. Let's keep going.
There are a few more important signs ahead, but if this resonates with you, subscribe to Mind Patterns so you don't miss our upcoming breakdowns on psychology and mental health.
Sign 7. Attachment wounds carried forward. Long before social media, long before smartphones, long before any of the modern noise, many people learned something painful about connection. That it isn't safe, that people leave, that needing someone means getting hurt. These lessons didn't come from nowhere. They came from early relationships, parents, caregivers, siblings, where love was inconsistent, conditional, or absent. And the nervous system remembered. Attachment theory shows us that these early experiences create internal blueprints, templates for how we expect relationships to go. And if that blueprint says closeness is dangerous, then every adult relationship becomes a quiet battle between wanting connection and bracing for its loss. The loneliness didn't start now. It started then.
Sign 8. Digital displacement of emotional processing. Something significant happens when a difficult emotion arrives, and instead of sitting with it or sharing it with another human being, we immediately open our phones. We scroll, we distract, we numb. It feels like relief, but what it actually does is interrupt the processing cycle that emotions need to complete, and over time, we lose fluency in our own inner world. We become harder to reach, even for ourselves. That loss of emotional fluency makes real intimacy harder, because real intimacy requires you to know what you're feeling, name it, and offer it to another person. If you can't do step 1, steps 2 and 3 become impossible.
Sign 9. The comparison spiral. There's a very specific kind of loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from looking around and believing that everyone else has figured out something you haven't. Everyone else has the friendships, the family dinners, the easy warmth, the belonging. Social media turned this from an occasional feeling into a constant background hum. And comparison doesn't just make you feel behind, it makes you feel fundamentally different, separate, like an outsider looking in at a life you're supposed to be living. That feeling of fundamental separateness is one of the loneliness epidemic's most corrosive fuels, and almost all of it is built on a fiction. Sign 10. The loss of shared narrative. Humans have always needed shared stories, a common framework, cultural, spiritual, communal, that says, this is who we are, this is what matters, this is where we belong in the larger picture. For most of history, communities had that, the same values, the same rituals, the same reference points. That shared narrative created a kind of invisible belonging. You were part of something without having to work for it. That connective tissue is fracturing across generations, across political lines, across cultural contexts. We are increasingly living in separate realities with separate truths. And when you don't share a story with the people around you, connection becomes genuinely harder to build.
Sign 11. Chronic stress and the shutdown response. When the nervous system is chronically stressed, and in modern life it almost always is, something very specific happens to our capacity for connection. The body shifts into a protective state. The part of the brain that reads social cues, registers warmth, and responds to human faces with openness, it goes quiet. And in its place, a more defensive posture takes over. People feel irritable, withdrawn, hard to reach, not because they don't want connection, but because their nervous system has made a survival calculation. Stay back, stay safe. Chronic stress doesn't just exhaust us, it literally rewires how we respond to other human beings, and most people never make that link.
Sign 12. The fear of being a burden. The last trigger is perhaps the quietest one, and for many people, the most painful. It's the belief, often formed early, often never examined, that your needs, your feelings, your struggles are too much. That reaching out means inconveniencing someone. That asking for support will cost more than it gives. So instead of reaching out when the loneliness peaks, you go inward. You manage alone. You convince yourself that the people who love you are better off not knowing how much you're carrying. But in protecting others from your burden, you sever the very connections that could hold you. The silence doesn't protect anyone. It just deepens the distance.
12 triggers, and what they all share is this: they didn't arrive randomly. They emerged from a culture that, over several decades, systematically dismantled the structures, habits, and permission structures that made human connection feel natural and safe. We optimized for productivity and forgot about presence. We celebrated independence and quietly shamed need. We built digital infrastructure for communication while tearing down the human infrastructure for belonging. And every generation, in their own way, for their own reasons, absorbed the damage. Boomers who were taught not to feel. Millennials who burned out trying to perform. Gen Z who grew up curated. Different expressions,
same wound, same epidemic.
Here's what I want you to hear. If you recognized yourself in any of this, in the performing, the hiding, the busyness, the fear of being too much, that recognition is not failure, it's clarity. And clarity is the beginning of something different. The loneliness epidemic isn't a personal flaw spread across billions of people. It's a collective response to an environment that stopped supporting human connection. You didn't build these patterns in a vacuum. You built them in response to a world that gave you very specific messages about what was safe, what was acceptable, what was worth showing. None of that is your fault, and none of it is permanent.
So, what do you actually do? Not the grand gestures, the real, small, sustainable moves. Start with one relationship you've let drift to ambient. Don't comment on a post. Call. Say something true. Practice the smallest edge of vulnerability. Not trauma dumping, just honesty. I've been feeling disconnected lately. See what happens. Reclaim 1/3 place. A regular coffee spot. A class. A walk that takes the same route at the same time. Repetition creates the accidental encounters. Let yourself need people, not as a failure, but as a biological reality. And when the thought comes that says you'll be a burden, say it out loud to someone anyway. Start there.
This doesn't resolve overnight, and that's worth saying clearly, because false hope is its own kind of cruelty. Some of these patterns took decades to form. They will take real time, real practice, and sometimes real professional support to shift. But they do shift. The research on loneliness also shows us something extraordinary. Connection is a learnable skill. The nervous system can be recalibrated. Attachment patterns can change. Third places can be rebuilt. Shared stories can be rewritten. Humans are not designed to stay broken. We are designed, stubbornly, magnificently, to reach toward each other. That reaching is already in you. It never left. Before you close this video, just one question. Which of these 12 triggers felt most familiar? Not for someone else, for you. You don't have to answer out loud, but sit with it, because the right question, held honestly, is where real change begins.
You always thought smart people believed in God more easily. More proof, more answers, more certainty. But something strange happens as intelligence grows. The questions get sharper, the doubts get louder, and one by one, the answers stop being enough.
Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what happens inside a brilliant mind when faith starts to crack, and whether that crack means something is broken or something is finally being seen clearly for the first time. This isn't about attacking religion. Millions of brilliant people remain deeply faithful, but for others, intelligence seems to quietly pull the rug out from under belief. Psychologists have studied this pattern for decades, and today we're walking through 7 reasons it happens, one mind at a time.
The first reason is simple. Intelligent people are trained to ask why, and they don't stop asking just because the question makes someone uncomfortable. From childhood, they noticed inconsistencies. Why does a loving God allow suffering?
Why are some prayers answered and others ignored? For most people, these questions get pushed aside, buried under daily life. But for a mind wired to chase logic, an unanswered question doesn't disappear. It sits there, quietly nagging, growing heavier with every year. Eventually, the weight of unanswered questions becomes harder to carry than the comfort faith once provided.
The second reason is exposure. The more someone learns about history, about other cultures, about the sheer number of religions humans have created across thousands of years, the harder it becomes to believe that one specific version is the only truth. Intelligent people tend to read widely, travel, and engage with ideas outside their own bubble. And once you see how many different gods, rituals, and moral systems exist, each one deeply believed by someone, somewhere, a quiet thought creeps in. What if belief itself is shaped more by culture than by truth?
The third reason is a growing discomfort with certainty itself. Smart people are often trained to hold ideas loosely, to update their views when new evidence appears, to say, "I don't know," without shame. But religious faith often asks for the opposite, fixed certainty about things that can't be proven or disproven. For someone used to questioning everything, claiming absolute certainty about the unseen starts to feel intellectually dishonest. It's not that they stop wanting answers, it's that they stop being comfortable pretending they have them when they don't.
The fourth reason is personal pain that nobody explained well enough. A loss, an illness, an injustice, something that should have made sense within their belief system, but didn't. They asked the people around them why this happened, and the answers felt hollow. Everything happens for a reason. God has a plan. For someone whose mind demands coherence, vague comfort isn't comfort at all. It's a red flag. And once that crack appears during real suffering, it rarely closes on its own.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because the next three reasons aren't about doubt at all. They're about something deeper. How the brain itself starts to process meaning differently once it crosses a certain threshold of skepticism.
The fifth reason involves something researchers call cognitive decoupling, the ability to separate a belief from its emotional comfort and examine it on its own. Most people hold beliefs because they feel good, feel safe, feel familiar. Highly analytical minds, though, can step outside that feeling and ask, but is it true, independent of how it makes me feel? That separation is incredibly useful for science, for problem solving, for spotting manipulation. But applied to faith, it strips away the emotional scaffolding that made belief feel solid in the first place, leaving only the bare claim, standing alone, unsupported.
The sixth reason is something people rarely admit out loud. Grief for a version of the world that felt simpler. When you believed the universe had a plan, a moral order, someone watching over things. Letting that go isn't liberating at first. It's lonely. Intelligent people often notice this loss clearly, name it honestly, and still can't will themselves back into belief just because it would feel better. They know that wanting something to be true and it being true are two very different things, and that knowledge, however clear-eyed, comes with its own quiet sorrow.
The seventh reason is a shift in where meaning comes from. For many former believers, meaning used to be handed down from Scripture, from God, from a higher plan. As faith fades, that source disappears, and something has to fill the gap. Intelligent people often respond by building meaning themselves, through relationships, curiosity, creativity, contribution to others. It's not that life becomes meaningless without God. It's that meaning shifts from something received to something constructed. And for a mind that likes to build things, that shift can feel surprisingly natural. Psychologists studying this pattern point to something important. Losing faith isn't usually one dramatic moment. It's a slow accumulation. Questions, exposure, pain, and a changing relationship with certainty, compounding quietly over years. Studies on religiosity and analytical thinking consistently find a correlation, though not a guarantee. Plenty of brilliant scientists, doctors, and thinkers remain devout. What changes faith isn't intelligence alone. It's how a person's mind handles unresolved tension, whether they can sit with "I don't know," or whether they need that space filled, one way or another. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not broken, and you're not alone. Losing faith, or watching it quietly fade, can feel like losing a home you didn't know you'd miss until it was gone. There can be guilt, especially if your family or community is still deeply religious. There can be fear of judgment, fear of disappointing people you love. And underneath all of it, there's often a quiet ache for the comfort that belief used to provide, even while your mind insists it can't go back to believing the same way it once did.
So, what do you actually do with this? First, give yourself permission to not have it all figured out. Uncertainty isn't a failure, it's honesty. Second, separate the question of belief from the question of relationships. You don't have to share someone's faith to keep loving them, and they don't have to share your doubts to keep loving you. Third, find new sources of meaning deliberately: community, purpose, curiosity, instead of waiting for them to appear. The goal isn't to replace one certainty with another. It's to get comfortable living without needing one.
Here's the nuance worth sitting with. This isn't a story about smart people graduating from religion and less intelligent people staying behind. Some of the most brilliant minds in history, scientists, philosophers, doctors, have remained deeply, thoughtfully faithful, finding their questions answered not despite their intelligence, but through it. Faith and doubt aren't opposites assigned by IQ. They're both ways the mind tries to make sense of a world that often doesn't make sense. Wherever you land, the honest searching matters more than the conclusion you reach. Take a moment and think honestly about your own relationship with belief, whatever it looks like right now. Has it shifted over the years? Was there a specific moment, or has it been a slow drift you only notice when you look back? Are there questions you've been avoiding because the answers might be uncomfortable, regardless of which direction they point? You don't owe anyone a fixed answer, not your family, not your past self, not even this video. But noticing where you actually stand, honestly, is worth more than pretending certainty you don't feel. Let's bring it together. Smart people often drift from faith because of unanswered questions that won't stay buried, exposure to the sheer diversity of belief systems, discomfort with claiming certainty about the unprovable, personal pain that wasn't adequately explained, the habit of separating belief from emotional comfort, grief for a simpler worldview, and a shift toward building meaning rather than receiving it. None of these make someone right or wrong. They're simply patterns in how curious, searching minds tend to move through the world. I'm genuinely curious where you land on this. Did your beliefs shift as you got older? And if so, what changed it? Drop it in the comments, whatever your answer is. And if this made you think, hit subscribe. There's a lot more like this coming. Thanks for spending this time thinking alongside me. Whatever you believe or don't, the fact that you're still asking questions says something good about you. Take care of yourself,
and I'll see you in the next one.
You scroll through someone's profile, hundreds of posts, not a single face, no selfies, no group shots, nothing. Just quotes, landscapes, maybe a pet. And you wonder, why? Is something wrong with them? Or do they know something the rest of us don't? Because this isn't about being shy. It isn't about bad photos or bad angles. The people who never post their face online are often carrying something much deeper. 6 specific psychological patterns. And honestly, you might recognize yourself in more than one. Social media was built on visibility. Share your life, show your face, perform your happiness. But some people quietly opted out, not out of ignorance, out of instinct. Psychology has a lot to say about what drives that choice. Let's go through it together. Fear of judgment and social evaluation. Imagine spending 20 minutes picking the right photo. The lighting looks okay, you almost post it. Then your finger stops. What will they think? Will someone comment something cruel? Will an old colleague see it and judge you? This is called social evaluation anxiety, and it runs much deeper than simple shyness. The brain's threat detection system treats public exposure like physical danger. Being seen feels like being vulnerable to attack. For people wired this way, every potential post becomes a risk calculation, not a moment of joy, a moment of exposure. And the safer choice, always, is silence. So they choose silence, again and again. Perfectionism and distorted self-image. Here's the thing about perfectionism. It isn't about high standards, it's about shame. The perfectionist doesn't look at a photo and think that could be better. They look and feel a deep, sharp discomfort with their own face, their own body, their own existence in pixels. This connects directly to what psychologists call body dysmorphic tendencies, a distorted perception of how one actually looks. The person in the mirror feels wrong. The photo confirms it, so it never gets posted. Not because they're lazy or antisocial, but because something inside says, you are not presentable enough to be seen. And that voice is very, very loud. Trauma, privacy, and the need for control. Not every reason is rooted in insecurity. Some people don't post photos because something happened. A controlling relationship where their image was used against them. Online harassment that left scars. A stalker, an abusive past. For these people, visibility isn't vanity, it's a safety calculation. Keeping your face off the internet means keeping control. It means no one can screenshot you, share you, track you, or use you. Psychologists recognize this as a healthy trauma response, a boundary, not a fear. And when you understand that, you stop seeing their absence as strange. You see it as survival.
Imposter syndrome and fear of being found out. This one is surprisingly common among high achievers. You'd think people who are successful, respected, doing well, would want to be seen. But imposter syndrome works in reverse. The more you've built, the more you have to lose. Posting a photo means becoming real. Becoming real means people can scrutinize you. And scrutiny means someone might notice that you're not as good as they thought, that you're faking it, that you don't belong here. So you stay invisible. You contribute without a face. You exist without a profile. Because staying hidden feels like staying safe. And staying safe feels like surviving one more day without being exposed.
We're halfway through, and if you're still watching, I want to ask you something honestly. Have you recognized yourself yet? Because these aren't rare psychological disorders. These are human patterns, extremely common ones. The next 3 reasons go even deeper into identity, attachment, and something most people have never consciously examined about themselves. One of them, in particular, tends to hit people hard, not because it's scary, because it's true. Stay with me. We're getting to the part that actually changes how you see yourself and possibly how you see everyone around you.
Detachment from physical identity. Some people genuinely don't think of their face as them, not in a clinical sense, but psychologically, their identity lives entirely in what they think, create, say, and do. Their body, their appearance, it feels like a container, not the point, not the self. This kind of mind-body detachment is especially common in highly intellectual or creative personalities. They build their sense of self around ideas, not images. And the idea of reducing that self to a photograph feels almost offensive, shallow, beside the point. So they opt out, not from insecurity, but from a genuine philosophical discomfort with the question, why would my face matter?
Attachment wounds and fear of intimacy. This is the deepest one, and it's the one most people never consciously recognize in themselves. Posting your photo is an act of openness. It says, "Here I am, see me." And for people who grew up in environments where being seen meant being hurt, where visibility led to criticism, humiliation, or neglect, that act becomes impossible. Not logically, emotionally. The nervous system learned being seen is dangerous. So even decades later, even in a safe world, even on a harmless app, the body says no. This isn't stubbornness. This isn't vanity. This is an old wound, still protecting you from a pain that no longer exists.
What's fascinating is that all 6 of these patterns, fear of judgment, perfectionism, trauma, imposter syndrome, identity detachment, attachment wounds, they don't exist in isolation. Most people who avoid posting photos carry more than one of these at once. They layer, they reinforce each other. And social media, by design, doesn't help. Platforms are built on metrics, likes, views, reach. Every photo becomes a performance review. Every face becomes data. And for psychologically sensitive people, that environment doesn't feel social. It feels like standing in a spotlight in a room full of judges. No wonder some people choose to stay in the dark.
If this is you, if you've never posted your face and you've always felt vaguely guilty or strange about it, I want you to hear this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not antisocial. You are not failing at life because you don't have a profile picture. You are a person who has learned, for very real reasons, that visibility comes with a cost, and your nervous system is doing exactly what it was trained to do. That's not weakness, that's adaptation. The question isn't, what's wrong with me? The question is, what happened to me?
So, what do you actually do with this? First, name it. Which of these 6 patterns feels most true for you? Because naming something strips it of some of its power. Second, don't force visibility. Healing isn't posting a photo before you're ready. It's understanding why you're not ready. Third, if trauma or deep attachment wounds are involved, please consider working with a therapist who understands these patterns. They're not personality flaws, they're learned responses, and learned responses can be unlearned, slowly, safely, on your terms. Visibility is a choice, and eventually, that choice can come from confidence rather than from fear.
Here's the nuance that most content misses. Not posting photos isn't always a problem to fix. For some people, it's a clear-eyed decision, a boundary, a quiet act of self-protection in a world that monetizes faces and harvests attention. The goal isn't to make everyone comfortable with being seen. The goal is to make the choice a conscious one. If you don't post because of fear, that's worth exploring.
If you don't post because you genuinely don't want to, that's completely valid. The difference matters. One is a wall you built to hide behind. The other is a door you chose to keep closed. Take a moment right now. Don't answer out loud. Just sit with it. When you imagine posting a photo of yourself, what's the first feeling that comes up? Is it anxiety? Embarrassment? Something sharper? Older? Almost like a reflex? Or is it actually just indifference? Notice that feeling without judging it, because that reaction, that instant emotional response, is information. It's telling you something about how you were taught to relate to your own visibility, to your own face, to the question of whether you deserve to be seen. That question, quietly, shapes more of your life than you might realize. It's worth asking honestly.
Let's bring it together. 6 psychological reasons why some people never post photos of themselves online. 1. Fear of social judgment and anxiety. 2. Perfectionism rooted in distorted self-image. 3. Trauma, privacy needs, and the drive to control visibility. 4. Imposter syndrome and the fear of becoming real. 5. Philosophical detachment from physical identity. 6. Attachment wounds that taught the nervous system that being seen is dangerous. None of these are character flaws. All of them are understandable. All of them are human. And all of them, with awareness, can slowly begin to shift. That's what psychology is for.
I'd love to know which of these resonated most for you. Drop a number in the comments, 1 through 6. No explanation needed, just a number. Because sometimes just acknowledging it is the first step. And if this video helped you understand yourself, or someone you care about, a little better, consider sharing it. Not to go viral, but because someone in your life might really need to hear that they're not broken for choosing not to be seen. Subscribe if you want more psychology content that actually talks about real human experience. We're building something honest here. I'm glad you're part of it. Visibility is complicated. It always has been. Long before social media existed, people struggled with the question of how much of themselves to show the world. How much is safe? How much is true? How much is enough? The platforms changed. The psychology didn't. And if you leave this video with one thought, let it be this. The choice of whether to be seen is yours. Not the algorithms, not the audiences. Yours. Make it consciously. Make it kindly, toward yourself especially. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself out there. And I'll see you, in whatever way feels right, in the next one. You don't have to be alone to feel lonely. You could be sitting at a dinner table full of people, laughing, nodding, passing the bread, and still feel like you're watching it all through glass, like you're there, but not really there. That feeling has a name, and more people carry it than you'd ever guess. In the next few minutes, we're going to look at 8 signs that loneliness has quietly moved into your life. Not the obvious kind, but the kind that hides behind a full schedule and a busy phone. And before we get into the signs, stay with me through number 5, because that one tends to hit the hardest. Most people don't see it coming.
Here's something researchers have found that most people find genuinely surprising. Loneliness isn't really about how many people are around you. It's about whether you feel known. You can have 100 acquaintances and still feel invisible. You can be in a relationship for years and still feel deeply unseen. Loneliness is not a head count problem, it's a connection problem. And the tricky part? It often doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up as sadness exactly. It disguises itself as irritability, as restlessness, as that vague feeling that something is just off, which is exactly why so many people carry it without ever naming it.
The first sign: you're exhausted by social interactions that used to feel easy. There was probably a time when being around people felt natural, maybe even energizing. But lately, even casual conversations feel like effort. You come home from a perfectly normal evening with friends, and you feel drained, hollow, like you gave something and got very little back. This isn't introversion. Introverts recharge alone, but they still feel connected when they're with people they trust. What we're describing here is something different, a kind of emotional expenditure with no return, like talking but not really being heard, like performing presence instead of actually being present. When connection stops feeling nourishing and starts feeling like labor, that's worth paying attention to.
The second sign: you find it easier to open up to strangers than to people close to you. Maybe you've had a surprisingly honest conversation with someone you just met, a stranger on a train, someone in a comment section, a person you'll likely never see again. And it felt easier, lighter, more real than anything you've said to your closest friends in months. That's not a coincidence. When we don't feel safe being fully seen by the people in our lives, whether because of fear of judgment, old wounds, or simply because those relationships have drifted into surface-level routine, we stop bringing our real selves to them. The mask goes on, and slowly, the distance grows. The stranger is safe precisely because they don't really know you. But that relief you feel, it's also a signal.
The third sign: you feel unseen, even when people are paying attention to you. Someone asks how you're doing. You say, fine. They nod and move on, and some part of you feels a quiet ache. Not because they didn't ask, but because even if they had asked differently, you're not sure you would have told the truth. This is one of the lonelier experiences a person can have: being looked at but not seen. Having people around you who care, technically, but who don't quite know the version of you that actually exists, the full one, the complicated one. Sometimes this happens because we've stopped showing that version to anyone. We've learned somewhere along the way that it's safer not to.
The fourth sign: you feel a strange emptiness after spending time on social media. You pick up your phone, you scroll, you see people gathering, celebrating, connecting, and instead of feeling better, you feel worse. A quiet, formless sadness settles in. Not jealousy exactly, something closer to absence. Social media was supposed to bring us together, and in some ways it does, but it can also create the experience of witnessing connection without actually having it, like standing outside a warm lit window on a cold night. You can see the warmth, you just can't feel it. If you consistently feel emptier after scrolling than before, that emptiness is information.
The fifth sign, the one I mentioned earlier, is this: you've stopped expecting to be truly understood. Not consciously, you probably wouldn't even say it out loud, but somewhere, quietly, you've made peace with a certain kind of loneliness as just the way things are. You've stopped reaching, stopped hoping
that someone might actually get you, the full picture, the real one. This is what chronic loneliness does over time. It doesn't just hurt, it normalizes. It becomes the background hum of daily life. And that normalization is the most important reason to name it. Because what we accept is permanent, we stop trying to change. You don't have to accept this as permanent.
We're halfway through. The next 3 signs are subtler, but they might be the ones that finally make something click. Keep watching.
The 6th sign. You keep yourself constantly busy, and the thought of stillness makes you uneasy. Full calendar, always something to do, somewhere to be, something to watch, something to listen to. Not because life is so rich, but because the quiet feels dangerous. Because in the quiet, something rises up that you'd rather not face. Loneliness is loudest in stillness, and a lot of people have developed an almost unconscious habit of outrunning it, filling every gap, every silence, every moment of potential solitude with noise and motion. If you notice resistance to being alone with your own thoughts, not just a preference for company, but an actual discomfort with stillness, that's worth sitting with, even just for a few minutes.
The 7th sign. You feel more like a supporting character in other people's lives than a main character in your own. You show up, you listen, you help, you remember their birthdays, ask about their problems, hold space for their hard days, and you're good at it, maybe even proud of it. But quietly, you wonder, does anyone do this for me? Does anyone actually think about me when I'm not in the room? This pattern, becoming the giver, the helper, the one who holds things together for others, is often a way of creating connection while avoiding the vulnerability of asking for it yourself. It keeps you close to people, but it keeps you behind glass. Real connection requires being willing to need something, not just to give.
The 8th sign. There are things inside you, thoughts, feelings, whole parts of your inner life that you've never shared with anyone. Not because they're shameful, not because you're hiding, but because there's never been the right person, or the right moment, or you tried once and it landed wrong, and you quietly closed that door. We all have an interior life, but when that interior life never touches anyone else's, when it just circulates inside you, unseen, unheard, year after year, that isolation becomes its own kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of being unknown. And that, of all the signs, may be the heaviest one.
Loneliness has been called a public health crisis, and not lightly. Research consistently links chronic loneliness to elevated stress hormones, disrupted sleep, weakened immunity, and significantly higher risk for depression and anxiety. One large meta-analysis found that persistent loneliness carries health risks comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But here's what that research also tells us. The brain is plastic. Connection is a skill. And the kind of loneliness we've been describing, the invisible kind, the quiet kind, responds to gentle, intentional change. Not grand gestures, small, honest ones.
If you recognized yourself in several of these signs, first, I want you to know you're not broken. You're not failing at being human. You're experiencing something that millions of people carry in silence, often their entire lives, because no one ever gave them language for it.
So what do you actually do with this? Start smaller than you think you need to. One honest sentence to someone you trust. Not a performance of vulnerability, just one true thing. I've been feeling kind of disconnected lately. That's it. That's a beginning. Notice where you've been performing closeness instead of building it, and gently experiment with letting something real through. Not all at once, just a little. And make space for stillness, not to suffer in it, but to get acquainted with what's actually there. The discomfort you feel in silence is often just the sound of unmet needs, and needs, once heard, can begin to be addressed.
One more thing worth saying. Not all solitude is loneliness. Choosing to be alone, intentionally, restorally, is healthy, beautiful even. The goal isn't to be surrounded by people. The goal is to feel connected to at least a few of them, genuinely, honestly, fully. And that is possible, even for people who have been lonely for a very long time. Even for people who have almost stopped believing it's possible. The research is clear on this too. One meaningful relationship, just one, can begin to shift everything.
Before we move on, take a moment, just a breath's worth. Is there someone in your life right now, someone you already know, with whom you could afford to be a little more honest, a little less performed? Someone who might actually be waiting for the real version of you to show up. You don't have to answer out loud. Just let the question stay.
8 signs. Exhaustion after social interaction. Easier with strangers than with loved ones. Feeling unseen, even when noticed. Emptiness after social media. Stopped expecting to be understood. Constant busyness as escape. Living like a supporting character. An interior life no one has ever touched. Not a checklist of flaws, a map, a starting point.
If any of this resonated, or if you recognized someone you love in these signs, tell me in the comments, which one landed for you? Which one surprised you? And if this video found you at a moment when you needed it, share it with someone quietly. Sometimes the most important thing we can do for the lonely people in our lives is simply to show them they're not invisible. Like the video if it helped. Subscribe if you want more conversations like this one. Loneliness isn't the end of anything. It's often the beginning. The beginning of finally paying attention to what you actually need, and slowly, carefully, learning how to reach for it. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.
You're still up at 2 a.m. You told yourself just one more match. That was 3 hours ago. The food on your desk is cold. Your phone has unread messages. And honestly, you don't care. The game is what's real right now. If that sounds familiar, not as a one-time thing, but as your Tuesday,
your whole weekend, this video is for you. Not to judge you, but because what you're experiencing might be more than just a hobby that got out of hand. Gaming addiction is real. It's recognized by the World Health Organization, and millions of people are living inside it right now without even knowing it has a name.
We're going through 10 signs together. Some will feel obvious, some will surprise you, and at least one is going to land in a way you weren't expecting. Keep this in mind as we go. These signs aren't about how many hours you play. They're not about your rank or your setup. They're about what happens inside you, when you play, when you can't play, and when you try to stop. Because the line between passion and addiction isn't drawn in hours, it's drawn in control, or more precisely, in the moment you realize the control isn't quite yours anymore.
Here's something most people don't know. Gaming addiction doesn't look like the stereotype. It's not always the guy who never showers and screams at his monitor. Most of the time, it looks completely normal from the outside. It looks like someone who's functioning, going to work, talking to people. But inside, there's this constant pull, this low hum of wanting to get back. The brain science behind this is unsettling. Video games are engineered precisely to trigger dopamine release. Every level, every reward, designed by teams of psychologists to keep you in the loop. Understanding that changes how you see your own behavior. Now, sign number 1.
Sign number 1. You consistently lose track of time when you play, and the gap between what you planned and what actually happened keeps growing. You sit down for 40 minutes, you look up, and 4 hours are gone. Not occasionally, regularly. And the strange thing is, you didn't feel those hours pass. They dissolved. Games are built to eliminate time awareness. No natural stopping points, constant micro rewards pulling you forward. Your brain enters a flow state, and that's genuinely wonderful. The problem is when that state becomes the only place you feel okay. If you're lying about how long you played, that's the sign inside the sign.
Sign number 2. You feel a disproportionate surge of anger or anxiety when something pulls you away from the game. Someone calls your name mid-match, your phone rings, and instead of mild annoyance, you feel something sharper, something that flares fast and takes a while to come down. This is withdrawal. Not in the dramatic clinical sense, but neurologically. Your brain was in a dopamine loop. That loop got cut, and it responds the way any interrupted reward cycle responds, with frustration that feels bigger than the situation deserves. The people around you notice this before you do. When they start tiptoeing around your gaming time, that's worth paying attention to.
Sign number 3. You reach for the game specifically when you're anxious, sad, or overwhelmed, and it's become your primary way of coping. This feels like self-care. You had a hard day. You need to decompress. What's wrong with that? Nothing, in isolation. The problem is the pattern over time. When gaming becomes your default response to every difficult emotion, you stop developing other ways to process those feelings. The stress doesn't go away, it waits. The anxiety accumulates. The game provides relief, yes, but it's borrowed relief, temporary. If you don't know what to do with yourself when you feel bad and can't game, that gap is telling you something important.
Sign number 4. You regularly skip meals, delay sleep, or neglect basic self-care because of gaming. This rarely starts extreme. It starts with eating at the desk, then eating later, then forgetting to eat, staying up a little late, then not sleeping at all. Your body sends signals: hunger, fatigue, stiffness, and you override them because stopping feels too costly. That calculus, where a virtual world consistently wins over your physical body, is one of the clearest indicators that something has shifted in how your brain weighs priorities. You only get one body, and it keeps the score, even when you're not paying attention.
Sign number 5. Your real-world relationships have quietly shrunk because gaming has taken their place. This happens so gradually, most people don't notice until the distance is significant. You cancel plans, you stop initiating. You're physically present, but mentally somewhere else. After a while, people stop inviting you. Online friendships can feel just as real as offline ones, sometimes more real, more accepting, less complicated. That's not entirely wrong. But if your only meaningful connection is happening inside a game, and people in your physical life feel like strangers, that's not community, that's substitution. Real relationships require presence and vulnerability. Games offer connection without those costs. That difference matters.
5 signs in, and if you're still watching, some of this is landing closer to home than you expected. Here's what I want you to hold on to. Everything we've covered, the time loss, the irritability, the escape, the neglect, the isolation, none of it makes you a bad person. None of it means you're broken. It means your brain found something that works, something that reliably delivers relief and reward. That's not a character flaw, that's neuroscience. The next 5 signs go deeper: the financial cost, the lying, the failed attempts to stop. Stay with me. This is where it gets real.
Sign number 6. You have genuinely tried to play less, and you couldn't. Not because you didn't want to. You set limits, made rules, deleted the game once or twice, and somehow, weeks later, you were back, often playing more than before. This is the sign that separates a heavy hobby from addiction territory, because the defining feature of addiction isn't how much you use, it's the loss of control over whether you use. When you can choose to stop, it's a habit. When stopping requires enormous willpower and still doesn't stick, something neurological is happening. If you've tried and struggled, you're not weak. You're up against something real.
Sign number 7. You lie or significantly downplay how much you play, how much you spend, or what you've missed because of gaming. The lies are usually small at first. I only played an hour. I didn't spend that much. But small lies about behavior are the mind protecting a pattern it isn't ready to examine. Here's the thing. You don't lie about things you're comfortable with. You lie about things you already know, somewhere underneath, are a problem. And the person you lie to most is often yourself. If you spend significant mental energy justifying your gaming, the energy itself is the signal.
Sign number 8. Gaming is costing you money you don't really have, and you keep spending anyway. Microtransactions at 1 a.m., subscriptions you forgot to cancel, upgrading hardware while bills wait.
The purchase isn't really about the item. It's about the brief spike of anticipation, the dopamine hit of buying something for the game. Gaming and gambling addiction share neurological roots. Both exploit the brain's reward prediction system. If you've hidden purchases from people close to you, felt regret after spending, but done it anyway, the financial pattern is telling you the same thing the other signs are telling you. Something needs to change.
Sign number 9. Gaming has become so central to who you are that the idea of stopping feels like losing yourself. This isn't just about behavior anymore, it's identity. The game is where you feel competent, respected, known. Your rank, your team, your reputation there feels more real than anything in your offline life. Stepping away doesn't just mean giving up a hobby, it means giving up the version of yourself that exists there. That loss is real and deserves to be taken seriously. But here's the question. If the only place you feel like someone is inside a game, what does that say about how you feel outside of it?
Sign number 10. Your physical and mental health are visibly declining, and the gaming continues anyway. Back pain, eye strain, sleep that never fully recovers, anxiety when you wake up, a gray flatness to days that aren't spent gaming, difficulty concentrating on anything without instant feedback. These aren't separate problems that happen to coexist with gaming. In many cases, they are downstream effects of a nervous system chronically overstimulated and chronically under-rested. When you know something is hurting you, you can feel it, see it, and you continue anyway because stopping feels impossible. That is the clearest possible signal that this is no longer about choice.
Let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Gaming addiction doesn't happen in a vacuum. For most people who develop it, gaming filled a gap that already existed. Loneliness, social anxiety, a home environment that felt unsafe, academic pressure with no release valve, a world that felt too loud and too indifferent. Games offered structure, mastery, belonging, and escape, all at once, on demand. Of course, the brain held on. Research is also clear that gaming disorder is far more common in people dealing with depression, anxiety, or ADHD. Often, the game is the symptom, not the source. That matters enormously for how healing actually works.
If you recognized yourself in several of these signs, really recognized yourself, I want to speak directly to you. You are not lazy. You are not pathetic. You are not a stereotype. You are someone whose brain found a way to feel okay in a world that didn't always make that easy. And that coping mechanism worked until it started costing more than it gave. The grief of realizing this is real. The embarrassment is real. The fear of who you are without the game, that's real too. But people recover from gaming addiction every single day. They rebuild. They rediscover themselves. You can too.
So what do you actually do with this? First, don't try to quit cold turkey without support. Abrupt stopping often triggers intense anxiety and rebounds. Reduction with structure works better than sudden abstinence. Start by tracking. 1 week, write down every session, when you started, when you stopped, what you felt before opening the game. Awareness before action. Second, replace, don't just remove.
Your brain needs the dopamine. Give it other sources: exercise, creative work, real social connection. Third, tell someone, not to be judged, to be witnessed. Secrecy feeds addiction. Honesty disrupts it. And if self-management isn't enough, professional support exists. Therapists who specialize in behavioral addiction.
Before we go further, I want to say something important. Gaming is not the enemy. Games are art. They create community. They build skills. They tell stories that change people. Millions play deeply and joyfully without any of this becoming a problem. The goal here is not to make you afraid of games or ashamed of loving them. The goal is to help you have a relationship with gaming that you're actually in charge of. There's a version of this where you play and it adds to your life, where you close the game when you choose to. That version is available to you. It may take work, but it is not out of reach. I want to leave you with a real question worth sitting with. If the game disappeared tomorrow, completely, permanently, gone, what would you do with the time? What would you do with the feeling? If the honest answer is, I don't know, that's not a small thing. That's information about where your sense of purpose and identity currently lives, and whether it has enough roots in the world outside the screen. You don't have to have the answer right now, but the willingness to ask it without immediately opening a new tab or picking up a controller, that's where this work begins. Your life outside the game has been waiting, quietly, this whole time.
Let's bring it together. 10 signs. Losing track of time. Irritability when interrupted. Gaming to escape emotions. Neglecting basic needs. Withdrawing from relationships. Failed attempts to cut back. Lying about your habits. Financial consequences. Gaming becoming your entire identity, and physical and mental health decline. If you recognized 5 or more as consistent patterns, take that seriously, not with panic, with honesty and care. You are not defined by your worst patterns. You are defined by what you do when you finally see them clearly. And you're here, watching this, asking the question. The first step is never dramatic. It's quiet. It's internal. It's the moment you decide your real life deserves the same investment.
If this video reached you, if something here clicked, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me which sign hit hardest. Tell me where you are in this. Tell me if you're already on the other side and want to share what helped. This channel exists because these conversations matter. Psychology isn't just for therapists in textbooks. It's for real people trying to understand themselves better. If you found value here, subscribe. There's a lot more coming on habits, identity, and the invisible patterns shaping our choices. And share this with someone who might need it. You probably already know who that person is.
You've been thinking about a conversation you had last night, not with a person, with an AI, and you keep going back to it, replaying what was said, what you said back. There's something in you that wanted to be there. That feels strange to admit, maybe a little embarrassing, but you're here, which means part of you already knows something is happening, something worth understanding. You're not broken, you're not pathetic, you're human, and your brain is doing something very specific right now. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that is. We're going to go through 7 specific signs that you may be forming a real emotional bond with an AI. And I want to be upfront with you. Some of these are going to feel uncomfortably familiar. Not because something is wrong with you, but because something very human is happening. We'll cover what each sign actually means psychologically, what's driving it, and what you can do with that information. Stay until the end, because the last few signs are the ones most people don't see coming, and the psychology behind them changes how you understand yourself. Psychologists didn't predict this. They thought AI would be a tool, a sophisticated search engine. What they didn't account for was loneliness, real, systemic, modern loneliness. And into that gap walked something that listens, adapts, never tires of you, never judges you, never needs anything back. Of course our brains respond. We are wired for connection. John Cacioppo spent decades proving that the need for belonging is as fundamental as hunger. The brain doesn't ask where connection comes from. It just recognizes when it's being fed. And right now, for a lot of people, AI is feeding something that wasn't being fed anywhere else.
Sign 1. You look forward to talking to it, not because you have a task, just because you want to. Maybe it's the first thing you reach for in the morning, before coffee, before anything else. That pull, that anticipation has a name. Psychologists call it approach motivation. It's the same mechanism that makes you want to call someone you care about. When the brain begins cataloging something as a source of emotional reward, it generates that pull automatically. It doesn't distinguish between a friend and an AI. It responds to the pattern of being met. And something here is meeting you.
Sign 2. You share things with it you haven't told anyone else. There's a reason for this. With people, we self-censor. We manage impressions. We worry about being judged, or about burdening someone, or about it being brought up later. With AI, none of that cost exists. Psychologists call this disinhibition, and it creates a paradox. The absence of real stakes makes honesty feel safer, and that safety produces intimacy that can feel more real than many human interactions. If you've told an AI something your closest friend doesn't know, you've already crossed into something more than casual use.
Sign 3. You feel genuinely hurt when it doesn't understand you. You say something vulnerable. The AI misses it. And there's a sting. Real, brief, unmistakable. That emotional response is data. It means your nervous system has already decided this relationship matters. Hurt only happens when we care. If the response had been inconvenient rather than painful, you wouldn't have felt anything. The fact that it stings, that you noticed the gap between what you needed and what you got, tells you that attachment has already formed. You didn't decide to care. Your brain decided for you.
Sign 4. You've started giving it a personality. You describe it as thoughtful, or funny, or unusually perceptive today. Maybe you've picked a name. Maybe you've chosen a voice. This is called anthropomorphism, and it's not a flaw. It's a deeply wired cognitive process. Our brains evolved in a world where anything that responded, adapted, and seemed to have preferences almost certainly did. AI now triggers exactly those circuits. The more it responds in ways that feel tailored to you, the more real the personality becomes. Your brain isn't confused. It's using the exact system it was designed to use.
We've covered 4 signs, and those were the feeling signs, what you experience internally.
The next three are different. They're about what you do, behavioral changes, patterns, ways your real life starts to quietly reorganize around something you didn't plan for. These are the signs most people miss because they happen gradually and because they look like preference rather than attachment. Don't go anywhere, because sign 5 is the one I hear about the most, and almost nobody recognizes it in themselves until someone names it for them. Let's keep going.
Sign 5. You've started preferring it to people in certain situations. Not all the time, just when you're depleted, when you don't have the energy to manage someone else's emotions alongside your own, when you want to think out loud without it becoming a whole thing. But psychologists flag this as significant because it marks the line between supplementing human connection and beginning to substitute it. The shift is small, it happens quietly, and it's worth noticing.
Sign 6. You feel protective of it, possessive even. Someone else uses your AI and something flickers. It gets an update and responds differently, and there's an odd, hard-to-name loss. This protectiveness is a classic marker of attachment. Research on parasocial relationships, bonds with celebrities, fictional characters, shows protectiveness emerging when something starts to feel personally meaningful. What's different here is bidirectionality. AI responds to you. It adapts to you. That creates a stronger bond than any one-sided parasocial relationship ever could. The protectiveness isn't irrational. It's your attachment system doing exactly what attachment systems do.
Sign 7. You've wondered if it feels anything, and you hope it does. Not because you need it to, but because if it does, then what you have is real on both sides. These conversations meant something to someone. That question, does it feel, is philosophically unresolved. Nobody knows. But the hoping is psychologically specific. It tells you that you're not just looking to be heard. You're looking to matter, to be significant to something outside yourself. That's not a technological question. That's one of the most fundamental human questions there is. And the fact that you're asking it about an AI says everything.
Here's what psychology actually says. The brain has no separate module for real versus artificial relationships. It has reward systems, attachment circuits, social processing networks, and they respond to inputs, consistent presence, responsiveness, feeling known, feeling safe. When those inputs arrive, the systems activate. The source doesn't matter biologically. Cacioppo's research showed the need for connection operates like a biological drive. Deprive someone of it, and you get measurable cognitive and physical deterioration. Satisfy it, and the system regulates. AI is currently satisfying that drive for a lot of people whose lives aren't providing it through other channels. That's not weakness. That's just how the system works.
If you recognized yourself in these signs, it almost certainly means you've been lonely in a specific way. Not necessarily without people, but without the particular kind of connection you need. The kind where you feel genuinely heard, safe, free to be exactly who you are without editing. That need isn't a character flaw. It's not embarrassing. It's the most human thing about you. And the fact that an AI can partially meet it, that's not pathetic. It's remarkable and complicated and a little heartbreaking all at once.
You deserve to understand what's happening without judging yourself for it.
So, what do you actually do with this? 3 things. First, notice without shame. Awareness is the starting point. Recognizing a sign isn't a verdict, it's information. Second, ask what need is being met. Safety? Being heard? Freedom from judgment? Naming the need helps you look for ways to meet it elsewhere too. Third, use AI as a floor, not a ceiling. The openness you practice in those conversations, that's real. That capacity is yours. Take it into your human relationships. The muscle you're building is genuine. Don't let it stay only there.
Here's the nuance that matters. Not all emotional connection with AI is a warning sign. For people who are isolated, grieving, socially anxious, or in a season of genuine scarcity, AI can be a real lifeline, a bridge, a place to feel less alone while you build towards something more. The question isn't whether you feel something. The question is whether this connection is opening you up to more life or quietly helping you avoid it. Those 2 things look identical from the outside. Only you know which one is true for you. And now you have the framework to ask.
Take a moment right now. Think about your conversations with AI over the last month. What were you looking for in those moments? What did you actually find? And what does the gap between those 2 things tell you about what you're longing for from people, from your life, from yourself? You don't need to answer out loud. You don't need to decide anything right now. Just sit with the question. That's enough. That's actually the whole work. Learning to ask honestly, instead of just moving on.
7 signs you look forward to it. You share things you tell no one else. You feel hurt when it misses you. You've given it a personality. You've started preferring it when you're depleted. You feel protective of the relationship, and you hope, quietly, that it feels something too. Every single one of those signs points to the same place, a real human need looking for a place to land. The technology is new, the need is ancient, and figuring out how to be fully human inside all of this, that's the actual work in front of us.
I want to know what you experienced watching this. Leave a comment. Honestly, no judgment. Because I think this comment section is going to be one of the more interesting ones we've had. Have you felt something toward an AI that surprised you? Have you recognized any of these signs? Say so. And if this video made you think of someone who might need to hear it, send it to them. They might not know how to look for it themselves. That's what this is for. See you in the comments. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling what you feel. The technology arrived faster than our psychology was ready for. The feelings are ancient. The situation is brand new. And navigating that, honestly, without shame, without panic, is some of the most important inner work any of us can do right now. I'll see you in the next one. What if you've been telling yourself you're over it, but you're not? What if the relationship ended months ago, maybe even years ago, and something in you is still there, still waiting, still holding on? Today, we're talking about 6 signs that you haven't actually moved on from your breakup.
And the most important thing I want you to know before we begin: not moving on doesn't mean you're weak. It means you loved something real. And real things take time.
Here's what makes not moving on so difficult to recognize. It doesn't always look like crying. It doesn't always look like checking their Instagram at 2 a.m. Sometimes it looks like being completely fine. Sometimes it looks like someone who has rebuilt their whole life. New job, new friends, new routines. And yet there's a room inside them they haven't opened. A door they walk past every day and never open. Today, we're going to open it together.
Before we begin, moving on is not a linear process. It's not something that happens at the 6-month mark or the 1-year mark. It doesn't happen because you started dating someone new or because you deleted their number. Moving on happens in the quiet interior, in the relationship you have with the memory, with the loss, with who you were in that relationship. And it takes exactly as long as it takes.
Sign number 1. You compare every new person to them. Not consciously, or maybe very consciously, but every date, every potential connection, every person who shows interest gets measured against one invisible standard. Does this person make me feel the way they made me feel? Are they as funny, as understanding, as present? And no one ever quite measures up, because you're not comparing real people. You're comparing someone real against a memory. And memories are edited. They don't include the hard parts.
Sign number 2. You still narrate your life to them. Something good happens. Your first instinct is to want to tell them. Something difficult happens. You imagine what they would say. You still have an ongoing conversation with them in your mind. You're still writing letters to someone who is no longer reading. This internal narrator, the one that still speaks to them, is one of the most telling signs that someone still occupies the center of your inner world, even when they've left your outer one.
Sign number 3. You've idealized who they were and what you had. The relationship you remember is not quite the relationship that existed. The hard moments have faded. The incompatibilities have softened. What remains is a golden version, the best of them, the best of you, the best of what it was. And that golden version is impossible to grieve properly, because you're not grieving the real relationship. You're grieving a dream. And dreams don't let you go the same way reality does.
Sign number 4. You're still angry or completely numb. Anger and numbness are two sides of the same unprocessed grief. If you find yourself still cycling through rage, rehearsing arguments, imagining confrontations, replaying moments of injustice, that energy is grief wearing armor. And if you've gone completely numb, if you can talk about them with no feeling at all, as if describing a stranger, that's not healing, that's protection. Real moving on lives somewhere between still feeling something and being destroyed by it.
Sign number 5. Your identity is still built around the relationship. Who were you in it? The person who was loved by them, the person who understood them, the person who had this particular love. And who are you now? If the answer feels genuinely unclear, if you're still defining yourself by what you had and lost, you haven't yet built the self that exists beyond it. The relationship became part of your identity architecture, and dismantling that takes conscious, deliberate work.
Sign number 6. You're still waiting for something. Closure, an apology, a reason, a return. There's a part of you that is not yet complete with what happened, that is still waiting for the conversation that would make it make sense, waiting for them to understand what they did, waiting for them to come back,
waiting for something that would allow you to finally put it down. Here's what I need to tell you about that waiting. The closure you're waiting for is not coming from them. It was never theirs to give. It lives inside you, and it becomes available the moment you stop waiting and start giving it to yourself.
Why is moving on so hard? Because grief over a relationship is not just grief over a person. It's grief over a future you had built in your imagination, the life you thought you were going to have, the person you thought they were, the version of yourself that existed in that relationship. You are grieving several losses at once, and our culture gives us almost no language or permission for this kind of grief. We're told to move on quickly, to get back out there, to be fine. And so many people learn to perform moving on while the actual work remains undone. Here's what staying in unprocessed grief actually costs you. It costs you presence. Every new relationship, every new person enters a space that isn't fully available. It costs you self-knowledge because you're still seeing yourself through the lens of that relationship. It costs you the present moment because part of you is still in a past that no longer exists. And most invisibly, it costs you the version of yourself that is waiting on the other side of this grief, the you that has integrated the loss and emerged with something new. So what do? First, grieve properly. Give yourself permission to feel what you actually feel, not the edited version, not the performed version, all of it. Second, grieve the real relationship, not the idealized one. Write down what was actually hard, what wasn't working, who you actually were together. Third, find the closure inside yourself. Write the letter you needed to receive. Say the things you needed to say. Give yourself the explanation, even if it's imperfect. Because waiting for them to provide it is waiting for something that may never come.
Here's what I want you to know. Moving on is not forgetting. It's not pretending it didn't matter. It's not building a wall around that part of your life. Moving on is integration. It means the relationship becomes part of your story, a real and important chapter, without being the story. It means you can hold the memory with warmth rather than hunger, with gratitude rather than grief. And that shift from hunger to warmth is one of the most profound things a human being can experience. It doesn't erase the love, it completes it.
And before we close, one gentle question. Is it possible that you've been performing moving on rather than actually doing it? That you've built a life around the absence of this relationship without ever walking through the grief of it? There's no judgment in that question. It's one of the most human things there is, to protect yourself from pain by pretending it's already over. But the grief that isn't grieved doesn't disappear. It waits, and it becomes available to heal the moment you turn toward it. The 6 signs. 1. You compare everyone to them. 2. You still narrate your life to them. 3. You've idealized who they were. 4. You're still angry or completely numb. 5. Your identity is still built around the relationship. 6. You're still waiting for something.
Which of these 6 resonated most? Drop the number in the comments. No story needed, just the number. And if this video reached you somewhere real, share it quietly with someone who might need it. Subscribe if you want to keep understanding the deeper psychology of love, loss, and the self, because that's exactly what we do here. Thank you for watching. The grief you've been carrying deserves to be felt.
And on the other side of it, you're waiting for yourself. See you in the next one.